This is Terror House Radio with Matt Forney and Bryden Proctor.
Yeah, welcome to the Terror House Radio episode number 71. I'm Matt Forney, your charming and loquacious host, the founder and editor-in-chief of Terror House Press. With me, as always, is my co-host and producer, the world's only comedian, Bryden Proctor.
Hey, buddy. What's going on?
I'm not doing great. Where's this? Anyway, I just forgot. StreamYard must have changed the interface because I was trying to find the little setup here for the three of us, but it wasn't in the usual spot. Anyway, our guest for this program is TJ Martinell, author, journalist, and most importantly for the purposes of this interview, the author of The Legend of Forenia, The Twilight Kingdom, which will be out Friday from Terror House Press. TJ, welcome back to the show.
Matt, it's great to be back on.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to have you here. I think let's launch right into it. I had you on the show back in December. Brian couldn't make it then, but we released your book, The Pilgrim's Digress, which, by the way, all of you can go buy right now, which you should. Could you just give us an overview of the Legend of Forenia? It's a significantly different from the Pilgrim's Digress, which you described as a post-dystopian novel. This is a fantasy novel. Could you just kind of give us an overview of the book?
Yeah, so it is absolutely the complete opposite of The Pilgrim's Digress, which is a very sort of, I'd not say depressing book, but it tackles a lot of kind of dark themes that's really relevant to what's going on in America and the West today. The Legend of Forenia, I would summarize as the Legend of Zelda novel that should have been written, but nobody else bothered to write until I decided to sit down and work on it. It's kind of a condensed, and I would almost describe it, nothing against Tolkien, but it's a very anti-Tolkien fantasy novel where everything that Tolkien did, I'm not doing in this book. There's not a lot of world building. There's not many different diverse races. There's just one people, and it really gets to the point of something. I don't spend an entire page describing the scenery or a tree or the battlefield. Get right into it. And there's not a lot of there's no songs or poems or whatever. It's a pretty fast-paced novel.
So it's not like, say, what is it? A Song of Ice and Fire, which, by the way, I'm not a fan of, but.
Yeah, fantasy novels, and this may not be the case. Just when I was growing up, going to the bookstore, I would look at fantasy novels, and they'd be these 1,000-page tomes, and I'm thinking, I'm sure that there are people who read those books, but I just thought that's why one of the reasons I never wrote fantasy for a long time is because I just wasn't interested in spending hours of my time trying to come up with all these different exotic names for all these different races and essentially doing what everybody's been trying to do ever since Lord of the Rings came out, which is they're trying to do the exact same thing he did. The problem is that we're not medieval scholars and we don't speak Old English. And so he wasn't really writing a fantasy novel, in my opinion. He was writing a mythology. Most people should just stick to fantasy and keep it pretty basic, especially with the readership today. They don't have time to read a 1,000-page book. They're just not going to do that, and especially one that's slow paced. So that's why in this book it's very fast paced. There's not a lot of content where there's not action going on.
I got a question though. If it's not a really long book, then how will everybody know that it's really good? I mean, that's the way I judge books is I'm like, well, that must be a really good book. Look at how long it is.
That's why his favorite book is Infinite Jest.
I thought it'd be War and Peace or Les Mis.
Well, Les Mis has got all those cool songs in it. And it's like,
Victor Hugo. Victor Hugo was a great songwriter because he totally wrote that as a musical.
I like the musical part of it. I mean, I don't really know much.
Yeah, I love the artwork. It's exactly the kind of style that I was hoping Matt Lawrence would do for this one.
So I just put the cover art up by Matt Lawrence at Matt Lawrence Art on Twitter. Go give him a follow. But yeah, it's interesting that you point that out because I was actually talking to him a couple of days ago about this, and I'm not really a fantasy or even really a genre guy. I like some of the I like some works in that genre. I like Tolkien, obviously. I like Philip K. Dick. one of my issues with fantasy is that there is too much backstory, and you kind of articulated what I felt about the whole thing with regards to everyone trying to rip off Tolkien. Tolkien was a medieval scholar. He was a medieval linguist, and the history of the Lord of the Rings is basically rooted in his experience. It's basically him reinterpreting, in many ways, European history in the fantasy realm, which and everyone else tries to imitate that. I named A Song of Ice and Fire as an example, a really bad example of that. There was a comment on NPC, my posting career, the old forum years ago. Would you rather read a spy novel by someone who actually worked as a spy, or someone who has read a lot of spy novels?
Right.
There's a certain gravitas there. Conversely, would you rather read a fantasy novel by a medieval scholar like Tolkien, or someone who's just read a lot of fantasy novels? You can tell the difference between the subject matter right there. Someone who's working with something they know from personal experience versus something someone who's just working from, cliches and stuff they've read in other works.
Right. And I actually have not read very many, if any, fantasy novels since I was a kid. So that was one of the things I think was to my advantage. And one of the reasons I tend to avoid reading novels while I'm in the process of writing, because I don't want anything to inadvertently or subconsciously go into my work, and then people will think, oh, I deliberately ripped someone off on something. So other than the fact that I have no problem saying that The Legend of Zelda as the concept of the video game series inspired me to write it, because I always thought it would make a good novel. And the problem is with a lot of people is they tend to look at the series very autistically. They're like, oh, well, you got to include the dungeons and all stuff. It's like, no. You include the scenery, but what they are is this. It's kind of a coming of age story, or at least some of the classical versions of it. It's a coming of age story for a young man. And the other thing that I liked about the series that I can't remember who pointed it out, but they said it's not the traditional it's not a romantic story. This is not about a hero who's trying to get the girl. He's rescuing the girl, but that's sort of a byproduct of him saving the world and defeating the villain and that kind of thing. So that's what also is in this book is the main character, Jed. He's not really trying to win over the girl. That's more of he's focused on something else, which is what I like, as opposed to the more traditional chivalrous tales where, rescuing thy fair maiden to prove one's worth to her, kind of from the Arthurian legends. That was this type of fantasy I was not looking to emulate. I didn't want it to be about, the man, the boy proving himself to the girl that he was worthy of her. It was more of him proving that he was worthy of becoming a man. So that's what I liked about the Zelda concept that I wanted to translate into this book. And there's obviously parts that people might see some similarities to story structure, but it's not like I took any characters. Like there's no one who's specifically based off of anything like that. It's just what made people enjoy that series. I want to take those concepts, those core concepts, and translate them into a book.
So you say you don't read novels while you're writing your own books. So you're basically the Kurt Cobain of literature.
I have no, I read novels. I just don't read them while I'm in the process of coming up. Because one of the issues I've had that I have to deal with is that every time I come up with a story idea, I have to make sure that I'm not thinking. It may seem like an original idea, but did I get that from somewhere else? And so I have to spend a lot of time taking out anything that might be from a cliche or whatever it is. And also I tend to imitate I don't want to say imitate, but I write different styles for different books. And so like the Pilgrim's Digress is totally different from anything I had written before that. As far as style, I tended to be more wordy with that one. I was trying to be understated. The Legend of Forenia, I tried to do something similar where I wanted it to be a little understated and allow the reader to kind of fill in the blanks on some stuff. And rather than trying to be very descriptive and very vivid with the imagery, kind of just throw stuff out there. And we're such a visually bombarded society that we don't need a lot of explanation for what something looks like anymore.
Except for blind people. They still haven't figured it out.
Well, that's what audiobooks are for, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll circle back to what you said there, TJ, but to kind of clue the audience in, Kurt Cobain refused to listen to other people's music. There's actually one point where he ran screaming from a cafe because they were playing music. His logic was that if he started listening to other people's music, that would corrupt his own thoughts and make him unable to do the same thing.
Yeah, it wasn't the heroin. It wasn't all the constant drug use or anything that might have fucked him up. I don't know.
By the way, you know who else doesn't listen to a musician who doesn't listen to other people's music? Modern example, Chief Keef.
Oh, interesting.
Okay. Maybe he should, because he's not very good at music.
You take that back.
Yeah, now to be fair, I don't read novels, but if I'm trying to write, for example, I'm working on another book that's a historical fiction murder mystery, but I'm trying to write it I'm trying to describe nature the same way Jack London did. So I study other people's novels to look at how they describe things that they're writing and how they were able to do what I thought was a really good job of, he's describing the Klondike and all these different characters that are living in it. And then other novels that are more, I'd say outside of, I tend to not be very, how can I put it, like literary fiction. There's a different writing style with that. It tends to be more things happen to the character rather than them driving the plot. And my stories tend to be more character driven, where the person is the one responsible for the story moving forward. A author that comes to mind with that is Cormac McCarthy. His books, things tend to happen to the people in the books that there was that novel Atonement that I read years ago where I was trying to think of like what's the plot, and I thought, well, it's not really the characters don't do much. Things just happen to them. They're not dry. Nothing really happens. But
yeah, modern books really don't have character arcs in that sense. It's just that the characters kind of do things and have things happen to them, and that's more or less it.
Which I consider to be, not all cases, but in many cases, I consider that to be very effeminate, because that reflects a worldview of things happen to me rather than I make things happen. One of the frustrations I saw that got me into writing was I was seeing male characters in TV shows or in movies or in books where they were very unmanly. They weren't the type of men they weren't Clint Eastwood's type man. They weren't a John Wayne type character where they're trying to accomplish something. It's more of like, oh, something's happening to me, and let's process our emotions on that. I don't know.
Could that be because, in modern life, I don't know exactly who you talked about besides like Clint Eastwood. Could it be that it just kind of feels like that for every single person these days? I don't think things happen to people. I think life happens at people. And all you can do is go, hopefully that doesn't kill me, because it's horrible. It's a horrible existence. So maybe that's just the way people feel a lot of the time, is like, there's no fucking heroes. You try not to die every day.
Well, that's actually a really interesting thing about there not being any heroes. I think that's one of the issues when I was writing this book, is I wanted it to be a non-traditional fantasy story. And in most cases, it's a hero saving people who are looking for a hero. But what happens when you've got a world where the people actually aren't looking for a hero and don't necessarily want to be saved? And that's one of the themes of this book, is that a recurring theme is, Kara, who's the young woman in the story, she's trying to save her people, but what she keeps coming across is that her people don't want to be saved. They aren't looking for salvation, even though they may pretend to be looking for someone to get them out of their troubles. But that kind of flipped the fantasies, tail on its head. Imagine somebody trying to rescue a kingdom, and that's the term Twilight Kingdom came from. Is this isn't a kingdom that's in a healthy condition and it's being threatened by an external force. It's kind of crumbling from within. And how do you process that?
Well, right at the beginning of the novella, you already have the bad guy having basically won in almost all ways. He's conquered the entire land, and all he has left to do is just to track down this one girl and have her make him into a god. Like, it's basically over, aside from that one part. Yeah.
It was funny about the villain Grand Caliga. What I came up with for him was, so in the Pilgrim's Digress, for people who've read it, I didn't use anything directly from the Cromwellian England, but definitely the ending has a lot of similarities to what actually happened in after the English Civil War. With the villain in this book, I saw him as sort of like the if someone looked at Cromwell as a villain, what would they see him as? And this is kind of, there's hints of that as well, because it makes an effective archetype. He's this commoner who wasn't in nobility. Through sheer willpower, he's made himself into this very successful general, leader of men. He's effectively conquered the kingdom. He's trying to destroy any last vestige of the monarchy in Forenia. And there's lines where he infers just he has such willpower that he's not a villain that you despise. He's actually kind of a badass, but that's kind of villain I wanted. I wanted one that where he's not somebody that you loathe. He's a guy who, I was just watching the film that came out in 1970 called Waterloo. It had Napoleon, and there's a scene where Napoleon's having a letter dictated to some prince after he's come back from Elba and has resumed his status as emperor. And he's responding to charges that he usurped the crown. And his response was, "I didn't usurp the crown. I found it in the gutter and I picked it up with my sword." I could see Grant Caliga being that type of guy who would say, I didn't destroy this nation. I found it in the gutter. So that's where I didn't want. I see that a lot of people tend to write stories where the villains have no redeemable quality, and I think that's
some mustache twirling. Yeah, I'm going to go kick some puppies into the creek.
Yeah, exactly. It's like villains are, and especially in modern stories, they tend to just be one-dimensional because it makes it easy for people to understand. And then people get very uncomfortable with the idea that a villain might actually have some sort of I don't want to say redeemable qualities, but there's admirable things about someone. Even if they're a bad guy, there's still things about them that are worth noting. You don't.
Joe Biden. Say one good thing about our wonderful president.
I'd say that I would never depict him. So this is where we're talking about stories that I would write. I would never write well, what's funny is there was that Generation Z warfare short story I wrote. That was inspired by Joe Biden. Like, I can see in reality in modern America where we have a president who is literally wheel carted out in his wheelchair on oxygen, gasping for breath, and everybody just hangs on every word he says because they're so mentally broken. I totally see that happening at some point where we have Congress is essentially held at a senior living center and everybody's getting their morphine drips while they're passing these crazy, insane laws.
That'd fucking rule. I want to see that. That'd be hilarious.
And the redeeming aspect of Joe Biden, he's got good hair plugs.
Yeah, he's got good hair plugs. I like when he does this. This is a new thing. I like that when he's doing this now.
He likes trains. That's pretty cool.
Oh, and he's an immortal vampire. That's pretty fucking great. I think that's cool too.
That's actually this brings up an interesting thing that I've thought about, is that in traditional dystopian tales that we read about, like 1984 or A Brave New World or whatever, it's very interesting to see how people depict the bad guy, the bad government. Is they come off as being these physically strong, assertive, openly aggressive type people. But what we have, I think that's what a right-wing authoritarian government looks like. Is you have some sort of strong man, strong leader who's conveying physical strength, or just they're very open about what they are. Whereas what we have today is we have an authoritarian government that has that has Hunger Game aesthetics, where they all look like a bunch of goofballs, but they have the power to just shut stuff down and destroy people's lives at a moment's notice. Like we don't even have bad guys. Our wise overlords are not people who have any redeemable qualities. That's one of the problems. They don't even look cool. Like at least when people in some societies where they were being dominated, it's like, well, but there's something to admire about someone who dominates you through direct conquest or strength. Being conquered by Genghis Khan or Attila the Hun or something like that. There's something that's not nearly as disjointed as having Joe Biden get up and say you have to wear the mask if you're not vaxxed or something like that. There's something just repulsive to my soul of seeing people who are physically weak. Like we have people who are censoring us that are a bunch of obese, mentally broken, purple-haired HR ladies. Like these are the people that are ruling us, or at least, yeah. I try not to get depressed about, but that's the problem I have is when I see the leaders who are in charge. If I'm going to be subjugated to tyranny, I want it to be a tyranny that at least I respect from in a normal, healthy way.
I don't.
It's kind of it's basically it's bio-Leninism. It's bio-Leninism. That's the term we use here.
Yeah, I just think it's funny.
If you're not.
Why not have a? I think your internet's all fucked at the moment, actually. But why not look at it in the cool way of like, actually, we're ruled over by a bunch of demonic witches and stuff. That's kind of cool, right? It's like a spooky story.
Yeah, well, if the witches didn't weigh 350 pounds.
Witches always weigh 350 pounds. Have you seen Halloween decorations?
Yeah, but
have you seen?
Yeah, good point.
Have you seen? Beth? Yeah, they're up there. Sorry, did I cut out?
Yeah, you cut out for a second.
Roboting.
Yeah, I said, yeah, if you've seen the Roman Polanski's adaptation of Macbeth, the witches are all morbidly obese.
Yeah, that's where I almost had to gouge my eyes out. When my teacher was showing that in my high school Shakespeare or English class. We were doing Macbeth, and so they were showing the film adaptation. I'm like, you could have warned us. I'm almost scarred for life, saying nobody should ever be.
The context is that the witches were also naked.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention that. If you haven't seen that film, just know there are parts that you fast forward or you cover your eyes. It's violence. It's visual violence against normal men. So.
And they're old too.
Yeah.
If that didn't make it, if that helped make it worse.
Yeah, I think the other thing is it's the patronization that I have a huge problem with as well. The mother-in-line style authoritarianism of I'm doing this to you because I care about you, as opposed to saying I don't care about you. I'm just doing this because I can and deal with it. Like that is far healthier for me to process. And I don't get nearly as upset if somebody just is like, yeah, we like controlling everything you do, and we do it because we want to make sure that you're not a threat to our power. That as a man, I can deal with that. At least it's honest. But on top of that, not only is it authoritarian, it's just they're dishonest with themselves, and they're dishonest. The ability of someone to just say such ridiculous stuff is, it's I don't know. I try to not watch the news too much, but being a reporter, that kind of creates problems.
The term is mommy occupied government.
Yes. It's essentially having the world's worst mother-in-law being genetically cloned. You know how they were like going to make super soldiers with Captain America? Somebody got the vial for the mother-in-law, monster and just created a whole bunch of them, and then they all went into government. You know who else went into government? I'm convinced it was what happened is in high school is there was the guy who wanted everything. He got the cute girl, and he's like, I'm gonna go into business because I'm good at winning at stuff. And the guy who got his, got the wedgie, got his face shoved into the toilet, got picked on. He's like, I'm gonna go into government. And now they're
nerd occupied government.
Yes, the dorks and all the dweebs got into government, and where they don't have to compete. And then they just make all these little whiny, mealy mouth excuses for them to just micromanage every single part of our lives. And you just have to look at these people. It's not difficult to tell how many of them got made fun of in high school, and now it's Revenge of the Nerds through COVID.
Anthony Fauci.
Oh my gosh, that dude looks like a late stage USSR bureaucrat. Like you can tell as a kid he got shoved into a locker on an almost daily basis. This entire past year has basically been his revenge. Like he's just been, yes, finally I've gotten my revenge on the jocks and the sluts. Yeah. That sounds like a novel Annie Nowicki would write, is about an incel run government right? But then it would have to be in the nonfiction section because it would be too accurate to what's going on.
It's like they always, the nerds in charge, they're always shutting down, things like that cool people enjoy, like nightclubs and bars and whatnot. Sit at home all day on your computer. Like that's the nerd's idea of paradise.
Yeah, that's what I came to the conclusion is that our society's public policies regarding health are set by the most unhealthy, low energy losers imaginable. So for them to just be stuck at home all day, never going to the gym, never socially interacting, that's stuff that there's no loss to them because they already don't get to see anybody anyways because they just sit at their computer and rage against the world. And being able to they want to make everyone else as unhealthy, as ugly, as miserable, and as isolated as they are without COVID restrictions. This is why I think a lot of people are dreading, at least in my region, they dread having the restrictions removed because then not everyone else is like them. They can go outside, but these people are going to remain inside because they don't want to. They just can't. They chose their path, but if everyone's doing it, if everyone's broken just like them, then that makes them feel comfortable.
Yeah, and they're totally divorced from the struggles of like normal people. I mean, I've talked about this with Bryden. Have you seen like the current spate of like dirtbag leftists and so-called democratic socialists laughing about supply chain issues?
Yes.
Like, well, it's like, yeah, all these smug people who claim to be for the working man. It's like, oh, it's no big deal. You won't be able to buy toys for Christmas, Chud. And then you got all these people over the past week who were like, oh, big deal. Your supermarket doesn't have milk or meat. Those are treats. You don't need them. By the way, meat is a treat. That comes from the World Economic Forum.
Yeah,
very cool. It's very cool that democratic socialists are now giving us Klaus Schwab's talking points.
Yeah, this is where rhetoric is going to become increasingly important, and I get really frustrated with people who have the power to do something about what's going on, but they are completely outgunned and outmaneuvered because they're delusional. They think that they are dealing with people who are well-intended. I keep hammering this point home in my region, the Pacific Northwest. The destruction that is going on to our public services through these vaccine mandates, that's a feature. That is not a unintended consequence. That is absolutely what they're trying to do because these malignant narcissists destroy everything they touch. I've seen it so many times, in whether it's a little club or if it's a major organization, whatever. The moment they get in charge, they proceed to destroy everything around them because they take pleasure in the power to destroy for them. In my opinion, gives them a sexual excitement. That's just how. Is anybody surprised that Fauci funded or was part of that dog torturing experiment?
Nah, not at all. It's probably on the list of more wholesome things he's done.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the sad thing is like, well, yeah, I can only imagine. But this is the kind of stuff that they enjoy doing. They enjoy inflicting pain and misery. So when I see people trying to make appeals to their humanity, to be like, this is hurting people, we're losing jobs, whatever. Stop appealing to that because they get like that. What's the redhead's name? Who's the press release?
Jen Psaki.
Yeah, like you don't think that woman gets a little excited when reporters are pointing out, oh, there's supply chain issues, and she didn't have like a sense of ecstasy when she was able to say, oh, well, you can't get your treadmills on time. She loves saying that. They love saying these things. They love rubbing it in our faces, and everybody's they're wringing their hands and they're clutching their pearls and like, how can they say that? Because they're evil. This isn't difficult to understand. They are evil, sadistic people. Stop talking to them or about them like they are ordinary human beings.
Yeah, appealing to Jen Psaki's humanity is like appealing to Bryden's sobriety.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course they always trivialize it as well. It's like supply chain issues and hyperinflation. It's not, oh, you won't be able to buy toys for Christmas, Chud. It's, oh, you won't be able to buy food because chicken breasts are $50 a pound.
Yeah. This is why when I see this stuff going on, I don't I point it out, and then I think, okay, the prices are going to go up. I have to respond in my own life, but other people should not rage or try to like don't be outraged, just respond and also anticipate what they're going to do. They're going to make things, they're going to basically just, in my opinion, they're going to try and just crash and collapse the country. Like, and what's funny about that is I could be wrong, but my gut tells me something big's going to happen by the end of the year. And I'm not talking about something that they do. I think that they are just going to destroy this. They're going to create some sort of major crisis, and it's going to potentially force some people who have the ability to act. I don't know what it's going to look like, but we're experiencing, I get the vibe of like right before the Berlin Wall fell, or when the USSR fell. Like that's the kind of vibe. When the whole thing that happened in Afghanistan, I was like, I noted that the government that the Soviets put in place in Afghanistan outlasted the Soviet Union, because it lasted for 3 years. The Soviet Union had collapsed by then. We put a government, or the United States government puts their own government in Afghanistan, it falls apart in a matter of weeks. Like, what does that say about the United States government stability as well? I just don't think, I think that it's being held together by spit, wad, and gum at this point. So it's going to be an interesting, I think that within a couple of years, we're going to be dealing with a completely different situation. Now, what it looks like, I have no idea. But that goes back to the issue of what's in the book, Legend of Forenia, about dealing with people who don't want to be saved. But what in our world, what does a hero do? Like if you took a traditional hero from, like Conan the Barbarian or Superman or some sort of traditional hero, but you put him in a world where people don't want to be saved, what do you do? What
podcast?
Like every white person does.
Right. No, I think that's where I saw an opportunity to tell a different kind of story than what the traditional fantasy. And again, I haven't read enough fantasy to know if there's a lot of it out there, but it's more of a story about a kingdom that's kind of on the decline, and what pulls it out of it is not, and even one of the main characters notes at the end of the book, he's like, yeah, you saved us from this guy, but we still have work to do rebuilding, because there was he wasn't the problem. The main villain is not the problem in the book. The problem is the people.
He's a symptom of the problem.
Yeah, it's kind of like with the Joker film, where Gotham itself was the villain or the cause of the problem. Like the city is in its totality, as opposed to other interpretations of Gotham where it's a city with good people, but it's just being overwhelmed by criminals and by gangs and by corrupt politicians. We need someone to come in and clean up everything. Instead, in this book, or in the Joker film, just everybody is dysfunctional. And Thomas Wayne's not a good guy. He's like a Michael Bloomberg caricature, and the Joker is more of a product of that kind of society. Like they created the Joker, as opposed to the Joker just being a bad guy.
Yeah, the Joker was a product of their own abuse, dysfunction, negligence. He wasn't some force that just came out of nowhere to cause trouble.
Yeah. So it's, I think you brought this up when you were tweeting about it a while back about different types of books, but how do you tell do heroes even have context in our modern world? Like what is this the end of heroes? And also when there's nothing really to be saved, it's more of like we're waiting for, it's like we're sitting, not to sound macabre, but we're kind of sitting next to a relative who's 110 years old, and they stop being mentally cognizant at like age 91, and you're just waiting for them to finally go, so that people can inherit all their stuff. I mean, that's kind of what's going on here. Like, as far as I'm concerned, I'm just waiting for the United States as a country to end in its current form, so that something else can be rebuilt that's better. But we're not.
Careful what you're saying there. What do you mean? What do you mean? You want something maybe perhaps built back better? Is that what you're saying?
Hey, but unlike his plan, mine actually costs something.
God.
See, I'm against build back better. I'm about build back higher. Just take a puff of weed before you start building.
Yeah, those roads are going to be real high, apparently, from what I've heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of play devil's advocate here, like to kind of circle back to what you said about Afghanistan, TJ. Maybe that was intentional as well. Like the idea of, well, first off, they left God knows how much military equipment there that the Taliban's not going to be able to use. Well, most of it anyway. And they managed to make America look totally humiliated. And and they freed up a whole bunch of troops that could, I guess, potentially be used on American soil, to quell insurrections.
Yeah, that's all possibilities, and this is where I'm reluctant to kind of say with any certainty what's going on, because either this government is going to further consolidate power and become more entrenched, or it's acting this way because it's weak. And so that's where I know that there were a couple of people I know were involved in the intelligence community, and they thought that the government was going to last for several years, the Afghanistan government. Now, who knows? They were probably guys on the ground who didn't really know too much about what's actually being planned at the top level. But yeah, I think that that's absolutely a possibility where they just do this stuff to humiliate the country, because let's also be frank, the people who are pulling Biden's strings are not Americans. They're foreigners. I'm convinced that most of the United States government, I don't see the United States government as American. I see it as a foreign run government. And it's run by foreigners from different countries who are here to just exploit the American people. So I don't consider, when people use the word federal, they should just say foreign, as far as my book is concerned.
Or people who basically just don't have an attachment to anywhere, like a certain vice president.
Yeah, people who just don't have, they see America as an economic opportunity zone. They're here to just get wealthy and enrich themselves, but they have no ties to any specific nation. They have no allegiance to anyone other than themselves. And so that's what's killing stuff, is that there's people who actually care about the country, who actually care about where they live. And then there's people who show up and they're there to exploit and extract as much as they can, and then skedaddle before the consequences of any policies they've supported.
Well, we're in the end stages of managerialism. If you've read James Burnham's The Managerial Revolution, that's basically the manager class right there. The manager class being people like CEOs, civil service bureaucrats, right. people who have class consciousness in the Marxist sense, and that they feel more loyalty to managers from other countries than they do towards their own countrymen.
Yeah, and you got the guy who's working at Disney, and then he goes to work at AT&T, or somebody who, they're not loyal to a company, they're loyal to a paycheck.
And then he gets appointed Secretary of Commerce.
Or you're the head of the FDA, and then you go accept a position on the board of a pharmaceutical company.
Yes.
Stuff you just approved. That later gets recalled because it has carcinogenics in it.
Or you're say a Wall Street, you're a Wall Street stockbroker who becomes Secretary of the Treasury, and then you go back to the private sector, and then you lose about $100 million of your client's money, and you walk.
Yeah, you walk, but some guy at the bottom who made a error on some document, he goes to jail for 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, some guy who made $600 and forgot to report it.
Yeah, forgot to. Yeah, which is why the IRS needs to monitor our bank accounts, guys. So that's.
Or some nerd with like $1,000 in unrealized crypto gains.
Yeah, that's going to be another interesting one. I don't have an opinion either way on cryptocurrencies. I've been watching it just with kind of from an outsider neutral perspective, but it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because it's been inevitable that the United States government is going to try to control crypto, and if it can't, because a lot of wealth is now in Bitcoin, they're going to want that wealth. They're going to want to they're not just going to want to control it as a currency, they're going to want to get the wealth from people. And if they can't directly control the currency or get access to it, they're going to control people who own it. And what that looks like, I don't know. I'm not malicious enough of a human being to anticipate, but they'll always come up with ways where, they can't make you hand over the Bitcoin. They can just make you regret not doing it. But yeah, the unrealized gains is going to be one of those where you have to report Bitcoin, like how much do you own? You're going to have to put that down on a document or something like that. And it will become more radical and extreme in their policies the more the US dollar, if that loses stability. If there's some sort of currency crisis.
It already has lost stability. Sorry but continue.
No, yeah. I'm thinking where its status as the world reserve currency is on the verge of ending, or if they default on their national debt or something like that, something where they are trying to just come up with some place to find more wealth. And if a lot of people go into crypto or into Bitcoin specifically, so that's why I just haven't really formed an opinion on it, because some people see it as I don't want to say magic bullet, but they definitely see it as a long-term alternative to the US dollar. And I just don't know what that's going to look like. It's interesting to watch, but I'm watching it as a neutral spectator. I don't have a fan jersey of either side.
Yeah. Just a quick aside. I should have mentioned this earlier, but if you have questions for TJ, Bryden, or myself, you can go to streamlabs.com/terrorhouse magazine and leave a tip, and we'll read them later on the show. But this is something I also talked about with Bryden recently. I'm wondering if the goal is basically Argentina, which Argentina is like a byword for economic collapse and perpetual stagnation. Because a century ago, Argentina was actually wealthier than the U.S. It was considered an up-and-coming world power because It was extremely wealthy, had a competent government. They stayed out of World War I and basically got rich off of selling beef to both sides of the conflict. That's actually a minor plot point in Journey to the End of the Night by Louis Ferdinand Celine. The main character talks about how his girlfriend is cheating on him with Argentine beef dealers, during World War I. But then Argentina had a succession of really terrible governments and military juntas that just hyperinflated the currency by printing everything, spending like crazy. They threw open the borders and let in all these Bolivians and Paraguayans to the point where actually Argentina, you can actually overstay your visa and not get kicked out of the country. You can regularize it. They have a very lenient policy towards illegal immigration. And now you've got the situation Argentina is in now, where it's like they've had repeated economic crisis after economic crisis. They defaulted on their debt 1 million times. They've got capital controls to prevent mass capital flight.
Wasn't there that one there's that girl on Twitter who's from
Lady Esther?
Yeah, didn't she? I can't remember where I heard it, but that she and her fiance snuck money out of the country.
Yeah, she wrote about that on Twitter. She said back in, I think it was 2001, their last major economic crisis, she and her fiance left for Spain, and she had taped her life savings to the inside of her bra.
Yeah, I can't remember that was just stuck with me, where I'm thinking, okay, is that what it's going to be like for us in the US, where people are having to sneak their currency? No, how much is our dollars going to be worth? Like, what form are we going to be sneaking it out of? Is it, because the nice thing about crypto, cryptocurrencies, is you don't have to attach it to your body to sneak it out of the country. It goes wherever you have access to internet.
Some people speculate that the reason the borders have been closed for so long due to COVID is in part to prevent a mass capital flight event from the U.S. Because basically, rich people have always played games with their money, but if we get to a situation like Argentina, where the middle class is pulling out of the country en masse, it's over. It's done. You're on the road to Argentina at that point, and then beyond that point lies Venezuela, where you have just a very small class of rich, connected elites and a massive poor people, and everyone else is gone.
Yeah, I think that's a very strong possibility, and that would if that were to happen, it's like, what does America look like moving forward? Because one of the things that has allowed a lot of the insanity in America to go on is because they can just continue creating more and more money, and the effects of it they're being felt by the average person, but they're not being felt by the government, where the government is not able to continue playing these the fiscal games with manipulating the economy, manipulating the currency. What happens when they're constrained fiscally to spending only on stuff that you can't go into debt anymore. What happens when the federal government can only has the money to spend on basic stuff, and maybe then it doesn't even have that? What does the country look like then? And I don't have an answer to it. That's where I'm kind of curious to see what would happen. It wouldn't be good. Obviously it would be bad for the average person, myself included, where we would probably be having to deal with the Soviet era bread lines. You have to wait 2 hours to get butter from the store. I have a friend of mine who married a girl from Romania, and she's old enough to remember the days before the end of the Cold War, where that's what it was like. You had to wait a very long time to get basic necessities because there was so little of it and there was so little money.
But TJ, bread lines were awesome because they fostered a sense of community.
Oh my gosh. There are some people who just need to be. This is what happens when you have a society that doesn't have enough low-level violence. In terms of, there's some people who face. So many problems in life would be solved if it were socially acceptable to punch people in the face for saying really ridiculous stuff. And that's what, like, our foreign policy is set by people who have not been punched in the face. They were the kid in high school where they would hide behind, especially in my era, and you guys are probably the same age as me. In my high school, they had a zero tolerance policy for violence. So if you touched anyone in anger, you were immediately suspended for 3 days. I thought, that doesn't protect people who are normal, because that protects the kid who's the delinquent and doesn't care about life, but he gets to punch you and he gets suspended, but you can't touch him because you're actually trying to go somewhere in life.
I must read a prepared statement now. Terror House Radio opposes all forms of violence. Joe Biden is a democratically elected president of the United States. COVID is real. You should wear a mask. You should also get vaccinated. There you go. But yeah, going back to that point, that was something my school had as well. The zero tolerance policy for violence, where you basically, someone bullies you, you deck them in the face, and then you're the one who gets in trouble, because if you even if you didn't start it, you're just as bad. This very boomer lib way of looking at the world.
Well, they just suspended both kids when I was growing up. I mean, that was like, if you get in a fight, you both get suspended, and that makes sense.
I don't know my kid under two circumstances. If he started a fight unjustly, and if he lost the fight, like, son, that's the only unacceptable thing that's going on. But I remember one time I had a kid that threw a rock at my face, and I went up and tackled him to the ground. He was just being a dick. So I go and tackle him on the ground, and I start smacking him in the face. And the recess teachers pull me off of him, and they start lecturing me about how, you're supposed to turn the other cheek and all that other kind of stuff. I was like, and I, of course, being a barrack room lawyer, said, well, it said when you're struck on the cheek, when someone slaps you, he threw a rock at me. I didn't, and it didn't hit me in the cheek. So, but that mindset of like freaking out when someone defends themselves. And I think that that's a good psychological test for people is, if you see two kids, one's bothering the other and harassing them, and then that kid turns around and smacks him in the face, what do you do? At what point do you intervene? If you're only intervening after a kid is asserting himself and standing up for himself, there's probably something screwed up with you. You find something threatening about someone setting healthy boundaries with another human being.
No, it makes way more sense that if you got two kids fighting, that they both got to get into trouble, because you can't. That's their formative years, and they've got to learn. We've got rules that are, you can't go around fighting.
This isn't Nam. There are rules, right?
You can't do that. You can't go around fighting people. There's laws. You're gonna get into trouble for that. So we teach kids, don't fucking fight. You know, it's don't fight with each other. Why don't you call each other gay or something like that? But you can't hit each other. You know, and I'm sorry, if a kid, it doesn't matter who starts it. If two kids get into a fight, those kids get suspended. If one kid just goes and pummels another kid, the first kid gets suspended. But you're not allowed to fight. These are formative years. We teach this because otherwise they start solving all their problems like that, and then they're never going to be able to be the manager at the McDonald's. You know, they're going to be punching customers and shit.
You're never going to be able to be a DoorDash driver with that kind of mentality.
Right. You start punching people. Like, it's, no, it makes perfect sense. Like,
yeah, I mean, we all need to go get the mid-level manager job at the Globo Homo Corps headquarters.
Anywhere you work, unless you're a fucking boxing trainer, I don't think that you're allowed to, like, shouldn't hit people. I mean, it's like a basic thing that we teach people is like, hey, probably don't do that part of that. It's not even nice to scream at people, but definitely don't assault people because you get in all kinds of trouble for that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you shouldn't hit people.
Yeah, like it seems
except
like
if you're hit back. Thing.
Yeah, you can't. They're kids, man. You gotta punch the kids if they're fighting.
Man, I gotta say with the upcoming generation, and I'm curious about your gentleman's thoughts on this. I look at the upcoming generation and I see some rays of hope, but I also see instances where I'm just wondering if it's going to be, if this COVID stuff, this is where I'm, just noticing, is this how it's going to be for the rest of their lives, where they just never get out of this funk of, we're going to sit and play video games and we're going to be online all the time and our lives are going to be lived virtually, it's going to be lived almost entirely online, because technology has allowed people to not have, the lockdowns are possible because of the internet. There's no way they'd be able to pull off this nonsense if people weren't able to work from home and kids weren't able to go to school online and stare at a screen for 14 hours a day. I just wonder what it's going to do to their social skills and the way that they view the world. And it's relevant.
We're gonna have an absolutely crippled generation. I mean, you thought Zoomers were bad. You ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah, people. This is something I keep noticing. Is like with millennials. Yes, there's a lot of problems with our generation, and I self-identify as some other generation. I'm not a Gen Xer. They tend to be too rooted in being. How can I put it? It's pretty easy to tell like a Gen Xer movie where just they don't really care about anything, and it's just being kind of insincere, for lack of a better word, or something like that. But at least millennials in some cases are capable of social interaction. A lot of the younger kids, they're very literal, and they take things very serious. They tend to take things pretty seriously, and you can't reference anything other than a handful of stuff. Like with girls under the age of 30, God help you if you try and reference anything other than The Office. That's the only thing that those.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Bryden can rant about Zoomers for days. So,
I mean, I think some of them are they're not bad kids, but they also don't have.
No. They are bad kids. They're bad at being kids. They're bad at being kids. They're bad at being people. For real, the whole Gen Z thing, they're absolutely stupid. They're not funny. That's the biggest part, is they're not fucking funny, because everything that they think is funny does come from like a television show, which is not that different than when like we were kids. Like, how many times do people just quote Napoleon Dynamite or whatever from movies, or like The Simpsons or something. But a lot of those people grew up to like develop a sense of humor from like a base of content. Like The Simpsons was huge for me growing up to developing a sense.
When everybody watched it, adults watched it, kids watched it. These kids are watching stuff that nobody else, from what I see, is watching. And they like you were saying, they don't have a good sense of humor. So they aren't capable of picking up on, I guess, a sophisticated sense of humor. It's very simplistic. And the same thing with a lot of the TV shows where, for these young kids growing up, they're watching stuff that is very, and we're looking at the rise of autism. Like, well, yeah, look at the shows that are teaching them social skills. No wonder they're growing up, emotionally crippled.
Well, they're just dumb little shits that just repeat shit all the time anyway. I mean, it's true. Like, all they do is go, "Oh, hello, Epic Bass Department, Lindy Sneed." You know, these people are fucking retards, dude. They're not funny. They're not original. Half of them are just like real dumb. They don't know how computers work. They don't like, they're buying. These are the people that are buying NFTs, bro. This is what it does. It's a dumb thing. They're doomed. They're not even good at being kids. They're horrible people, and I hate them all. I don't like any fucking Gen Z douchebag that's out there. They're all awful. I know like 3 of them that are nice enough kids, but like they're fucking ugh.
Hello, cringe department. Hello, cringe department.
Lindy Sneed. Vibe check, you fucking retards. Idiots, dude.
Tell us how you really feel about them, Bryden.
Why? No, why are all rap songs 1.5 minutes long now? What the fuck happened there? Even the music's bad. Like, it's a fucking nightmare. It's just horrible. It's truly fucking horrible. And then they'll like, I knew I was an annoying 20-year-old as well, but god damn, that sense of like entitlement that these little shits have. Like, yeah, I'm like really like a smart guy. No, I don't ever want to get a job or anything. I'm going to make all my money on crypto. They're fucking horrible, dude. So, like, you know, whatever happens to them, good. Okay? The boomers fucked us. I intend to fuck these kids over so bad. When I am, like, in my 60s, I'm going to go, no, I'm going to keep this fucking job. Have fun being entry level in your 40s, dick.
Well, the problem is that the boomers are still going to be around, and they're still going to be hoarding all the wealth and all the control.
I was going to say, Brian, it's pretty optimistic to think you'll have a job.
Yeah, the boomers are going to ship it over to some country and then complain about why they have to press 2 for English. Yeah. You know, that's where I'm actually quite terrified. My fear is that the boomers are going to keep coming up with ways to postpone death. And it'll be, I mean, that's what this whole lockdown in a lot of ways was about. It's about boomers being afraid of dying. And so they've projected all that fear of death onto a bunch of little children who are now going to grow up emotionally stunted. And also the other thing that I'm sure Bryden agrees with you on this, they're taught to be afraid of everything, whether it's climate change, the forests are burning, everything's, going to end. And the country's full of racists. We're on the verge of being taken over by white supremacists, and it was like, at least the kids during the baby boomers, they risked nuclear war, but they weren't constantly being told that every single day. This is a day, and they weren't being shown videos of like what it would look like if there was a nuclear bomb in their home. It was just like, okay, go hide under your desk if there's a bomb going off. That's it.
Well, they did have they did have duck and cover,
right? Which was like a way of avoiding the fact of saying, well, how should we prepare? Well, nothing. If there's a bomb going off, you're going to incinerate. Like, you're going to die. There's no but we don't want to tell you that because then you're going to be really anxious. Like, here, go dig a little ditch underneath your house. It's not going to do anything, but at least gives you this sense of there's something you can do, as opposed to now where they're constant. I remember talking to this one girl who was a Zoomer. After the 2016, like the night of the 2016 election, she's watching, it wasn't her turn apparently. And she said, not ironically, she goes, well, that was our last chance to save the planet. Yeah. I was like, what? So imagine like all these kids who have all these anxieties about life, and then they get to go vote. See, that's where I'm like, what do you do? What do you do with that?
I don't know. They got to figure it out. That's the thing. They got to figure it out. Listen, there's so many things to be anxious for, death being one of them. I mean, that's a huge thing. But you got to figure. Oh my God. What did you say when she said that was our last chance to save the planet? Did you trip her when she tried to walk up the stairs after that? Like, how did you? There's no way I wouldn't have just hawked a loogie right in her eye and be like, oh, well, idiot. Like, what do you do to that?
Roll your eyes, maybe?
And also, is this generation going to be readers? Are they actually going to read books? And what kind of books are they going to want to read?
Theory, TJ. Theory. That's what they read.
Or young adult novels.
Young adult novels. Yeah, because I noticed a lot of these kids have moved from, back in the early 2010s, it was blogs were the big thing. Everybody was blogging and everybody was reading blogs, and then it switched over to podcasts, and now it's switched over to live streaming. Every kid I know under 20 consumes a significant amount of content by watching live streams of people who are either playing video games or they're talking about something or whatever it is. And then everybody wants to go be a YouTube influencer. Like that's their career goal. Like every girl wants to go have her OnlyFans account and her TikTok channel.
Yeah.
And
Bryden,
then we wonder.
Bryden talked about that about a couple months ago. He found an apartment in his area that boasted the building having a podcast studio.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think I caught that one. And then there was an entire house at one point where it was just full of these YouTubers. Like that's all. It was a house just packed full of content. Was it is that what it's called? Influencers or something like that?
I think
influencers, content creators.
Yeah, I think you have to get paid to be an influencer. I think influencers like hawk products on their Instagram and just take pictures of like their butts and stuff. But like content creators is like basically anybody. So like you keep saying like, oh yeah, all these kids watch these live streams and listen to these podcasts. None of mine, they don't. Not a single one of them. I won't allow it. I don't allow it. I find out somebody's 20, they're fucking banned. I don't have time.
Don't trust anyone. Don't trust anyone under 20, right?
Yeah, dude. Well, 30 actually. My rule is if you're under the age of 25, your brain's not fully fucking developed, and you can come back in a few goddamn years, and maybe you'll know what the fuck I'm talking about. And by that time, I'll have changed the rules. So, it's just the age gap matters.
Age gap lives matter.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. It's I wouldn't spend too much time worrying about what these kids are going to be like. I mean, we can already tell that they're going to be fucking horrible. Half the people our age are pretty fucking horrible, but these kids don't have a damn chance in the world. And, that's fine when all the dams break or whatever, because everybody just has a gender studies degree or some HR crap or hotel management shit, and they're working for the Chi-Coms. That's fine. I don't care. I don't live near a dam. Fuck it.
We're probably gonna have a shortage of plumbers in like 10 years.
Maybe.
Well, anybody who tells their kid to be a plumber or an electrician or some of these trade jobs, they're basically just they're setting their kid up for success without having to do anything. Just say go into plumbing. I remember this was a couple of years ago, I saw like handwritten signs on the side of the road saying like entry-level electrician, hire immediately, $45 an hour, full time. It's like, so this is what really frustrates me is every idiot told their kid to go to college and pursue their dreams, and their dreams always involve getting a worthless degree that they can't do anything with, and then they take it out on people like me by voting for totalitarian communist nonsense. So that's I don't worry about it. I just am thinking, okay, these people are going to vote a certain way that's going to affect me. So how do I avoid that? But also at some point, this is a fantasy novel that's coming out, and it does deal with some of the stuff that's happening in modern America. But if I'm going to write about a fiction that's taking place now, what is it about? Because I want to write a novel at some point about the millennial generation, what we went through, kind of like how, not to say it's going to be of the same quality or scope or ambition, but F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote his book, This Side of Paradise, that was looking at the lost generation. So I was thinking, I don't know if anybody's written, to my knowledge, maybe I haven't come across it, but I haven't seen a novel that really looks at the millennial generation from a millennial perspective. Most of it, and specifically from a non-leftist perspective, most of it is boomer spurgs trying to make fun of millennials, which is
rainbow parties, jenkum, butt chugging.
Right. I find it so, the boomers to me are what the Zoomers are to Bryden. Like that's how I feel. Probably more so because they, at least with Zoomer, like we didn't raise the Zoomers. Right. Bryden did not raise any of these Zoomers going out. The boomers raised.
How do you know that?
Oh, okay. No, sorry, maybe I was making some assumptions here, but to my knowledge, none of us raised any of them, but boomers absolutely raised the millennials. And then they get to go, the same ones who told their daughter to take out $100,000 in student loans is making fun of them for wanting to have student loan debt forgiven or something like that. So, but going back to the novel, I'm looking at that, but it's thinking, how do we, like, what do we do as writers right now? Like, what period of history are we going through? Is there a lost generation? Is there what's the narrative going to be? And I think that's really what's going on here is a confusion over narratives, because a lot of people are living in a 1980s Reagan era narrative on a lot of stuff. And
good times.
Oh, the music was better.
Yeah.
But
no, well, I got a title for you. I got a title for your book. Two Financial Crashes: The Story of Social Media. And or Two Financial Crashes: An Avocado Toast Love Story. And it could just be about how pretty much everybody, even the people that worked to have good jobs and all that, still got fucked over and are just kind of counting on it all to get fucking up. Even the rich people were like, I guess I'll put it into crypto. And then the other people, like the poor people, were like, I'm going to count on communism. So the millennials are all kinds of fucked up. We had a bunch of financial crashes and we weren't taught very well. And we're kind of just retarded from the internet.
Two financial crashes: The Rise of Generation Podcast.
Well, I have an outline for the novel. It essentially is a guy a millennial who graduates from college right during the Great Recession and is constantly trying to pull himself up, but he's dealing with all the stuff that a lot of us have dealt with, where there was just a fallout of everything. There was an economic fallout. There was that was also the height of hookup culture, and then there was all these hysterias. You had the college campus rape hysteria in the 2014, 2015, which shockingly has completely gone away. We haven't heard anything about that in a long time. It's one. They
all stopped having sex.
Yeah, that's. It reminded me of that film that it was I didn't really care for the film, but Josh Hartnett starred in it. It was 40 Days and 40 Nights. It's about a guy who, the tagline is, he's about to do the unthinkable, no sex for 40 days. That is the epitome of like a Generation X movie. But what's funny is try explaining that concept to a Zoomer. These spurts are like the idea that you have to actually engage in self-discipline to avoid having sex. Whereas a lot of these guys today we have an epidemic of incels.
The Zoomer version would be 40 days without jacking off.
40 days without my cell phone. 40 days without paying an OnlyFans gal.
40 days without recording a podcast.
You know what? Actually, that would make a good either novel or short story. Is a Zoomer who's trying to avoid like complimenting an e-thought girl that he's following on I don't know how OnlyFans or what's the other one, TikTok. What's the one that the girls are all basically thoughting themselves out on? Is it
Real life?
Maybe Instagram.
right, but like these accounts where guys just throw money at them, and that's it. They don't get
Twitch. That could be OnlyFans. That could be, I think, probably TikTok.
Yeah, where it's basically a guy who's trying to go 40 days without giving money to some e-thought. Like that's the Zoomer equivalent.
Don't press like. Don't press like. Don't press like.
Don't press like. Don't comment. Don't comment. No donation.
No, all these fucking nerds. They've got like calculators for penises now at this point. Anyway, none of them are like they won't talk to women. They're but it's like I don't understand these kids. The thing is, you would think that like the art would be better. You would think that like the music would be good, or like the because like when we were growing up, I understand why like my parents would make fun of like the scene music and like emo and all that type of stuff, which I still like. I'm sorry, Fall Out Boy is a great fucking band. It's a great band, but Yeah, it's like goofy.
I should retitle. I'm gonna retitle this episode. Bryden comes out of the closet.
You know, Fall Out Boy, bitch. Fall Out Boy is super good. Going down, down in an earlier round, and so we're going down swinging.
No,
being number one with a bullet, a loaded gun, shotgun, cock and pull it, going down, down, down.
No,
and then
no, I don't.
Sent his picture of his dick to like a 14-year-old, and nobody ever talks about it.
Well, okay, that part's
that's
okay,
pretty funny, but nobody ever talks about it. Emo music fucking rules.
I'm not a fan. Well, I like Theory of a Dead Man. They're not bad.
We got all kinds of good music that was going on. The rap was better, and then now there's good stuff. Like, you know, Drake is good, but he's not like one of these younger guys. I don't know what I'm supposed. It's all bad.
Well, culture's been stagnating for a long time.
Yeah.
Beckloff has made this point that there really hasn't been any major musical innovation since rap came around. Basically, I mean, I remember like a year ago, Brian, you introduced me to that band Pale Waves with that tatted up goth chick. Good band, I like them, but their music could have just as easily come out like 10, 15 years ago, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Dubstep started in the 90s, and then it gained a lot of popularity in the early 2000s, and then now it's in fucking Honda commercials, but dubstep's great. I'm the last guy on the planet that still listens to dubstep, but, you know.
Yeah, I think
they're going to put you in a museum. The last dubstep fan.
That'd be fine. I'll sit there, get just as much good done in society, you know. Just like, I was
envisioning more of the mountain stuff you like they did with Lennon.
I'm about to mount your mom.
Yeah, I think that's one of the problems is that there's this cultural stagnation across all. This is why they're doing all these freaking remakes and sequels to every movie that was ever made, is because they just don't. They've accepted this sort of end of history attitude, but they don't actually know what the world they want to look like. It doesn't exist. It's like, you know, at least with the Soviets, they had this idea, they had a clear vision of what they wanted for their society, even though it killed millions of people in the process. They were still capable of making, we discussed this on the podcast when we were talking about the Pilgrim's Digress. Soviets were still capable of making good architecture and good aesthetics in some cases. Now, they did make ugly buildings to demoralize people, but they also were capable in some cases of not of actually doing stuff better. These people are incapable of doing any kind of art well. Like this is why the left can't meme, because they don't understand. They've moved past the point where they're in charge, so they don't have to be artistically creative to get their message across. I remember listening to early 2000 music recently, where this was kind of during the Bush years or whatever, and this is when there was at least some sort of artistic endeavors going on. Some of it hasn't held up well, obviously, and all that other kind of stuff. But I think part of it is what art reflects values. What are the values? And do people understand what's actually happening right now? I think for a lot of people, they're just very confused.
Well, the thing with the Cold War communists, like the Soviets, had like a positive vision of the future. Their whole thing was like, yeah, we're eventually going to build the workers' paradise, and it's going to be great. It was bullshit, but it was something to aspire towards and look forward to. Whereas what's going on today, nobody has any positive vision of the future. Right. Even the people who are talking about Build Back Better and the Democratic Socialists about meat is a treat. Like, it's not about how we're going to have this great fully automated luxury gay space communism. It's going to be a dark, depressing world where you live in a pod hotel and eat bugs, and you're not allowed to go more than 5 kilometers outside of your designated living zone without a permit. And you're going to stream everything, and you're going to own nothing. There's nothing aspirational about that. It's depressing. It's all for climate change, or whatever.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think that this is where. This is where there's an opportunity for people who are, people like myself, where these people are the enemy is so negative in everything they do that they demoralize and depress even their own side. And so when people are countering that with a positive narrative, that's going to be very difficult for them to combat, because you just say, what exactly are you trying to build? Show me what that looks like, and then show me where you've actually achieved that. And the difference in a lot of cases with the Soviets is they took a country that it had a lot of beautiful stuff, but it was a poor country. Russia was a third world country, or not third world, but it was not really a major world power, and it was not economically prosperous at the time. So they were not taking something that was strong and destroying it. They were taking something that was already not doing well and then trying to make it better, as opposed to where things were not terribly bad 20 years ago. There were some things wrong, but it wasn't anywhere near where we're at now. This is where people are, how could it possibly get any worse? Now I risk saying that because I know it can get worse in ways that everybody thinks it can't get any worse, and it ends up doing so in ways that you wouldn't even have imagined. But they don't have anything good to say. They don't have hey, we're going to build a world where everyone's happy or everyone's getting along. It's for them, it's very much it's also driven by self-hatred. I don't think I'm not trying to paint, God forbid I paint a more positive portrayal of the USSR. I don't think it was necessarily driven or led by men who hated themselves, but the people who run this nation and who are charged in every stratum of society, they hate themselves. And it's reflected in how they do their art, their architecture, and the public policies that they set. They do this stuff because they hate themselves. And so they hate other people. And they project that self-hatred onto others. So
it's an Ouroboros of living.
Okay, yeah. Two things. One, I fucking hate myself and I hate other people, and I'm not a fucking lib shit asshole. They've got some other type of problem going on, because I'm like, taxes, that's ridiculous. We ought to just privatize everything, and that'll be at least a step in the right direction. That's going to come with all kinds of problems, but at least it'd be one thing down. But I think that they don't have to have this positive vision, because they can use it in their rhetoric to say, like, well, we have to clamp down and become more aggressive because things are this bad, and like, look at how bad it is. That's why we have to welcome authoritarianism and all of that. It's just used in their stupid rhetoric of like, we must sacrifice because things are this bad. So you keep them all depressed and alarmed and anxious and all of that. They use that. They use that as, see, clearly everything's awful. We don't want to feel this way forever. Anything would be better than this. That's why we have to, bathrooms and toy aisles and shit.
Right. I think the issue is they also demoralize their own side to the point where, like, what is there to believe in or care about? It really is begging the question of, like, why do they even want to live? Like, that's a question I would put to some of these people. If you feel this way, like, what makes you want to live? Because there's a problem everywhere. There's a crisis everywhere. This is never going to get solved. We have 2 years left to save the planet. 2 years later, we have 5 years to save the planet. It's just a continuous, the rhetoric is very apocalyptic
we have 30 seconds to save the planet.
Yeah, they have it's very religious. It's an apocalyptic narrative of, like, and that's what's interesting is they're talking about how they're going to build a better world, but they're talking about it like this is the end of our lives. Like, this is the end.
They're just scaring people into doing what they want, man. I don't think there's like a big psychological thing that should be studied. It's just, this is what bullies do, is they just scare people into doing what, they want. They scare stupid people into, and on top of that, most of the people, besides your like far left types, in general, like, the ones that like just vote the Democrat way and are just like, and I am a suburban mom and all of that shit. They support these things because, one, it doesn't really affect them. Or at least yet. And two, it's just a way to show that they're very smart and compassionate. So I don't know. I don't think these people are particularly demoralized by this. I think this is just their damn life, and they're fucking happy with it. As happy as they're going to be. I mean, there's something, relatable about being a miserable fucking cunt. But again, none of these people are funny. So I don't know what their outlet is besides being a fucking bully.
Yeah, I think the best way to combat this stuff, and I'm not talking about in any kind of organized, we're gonna fight, we're gonna take this country back, man. Boomer. I'm talking about more of like in our personal lives. For me, I become more conscious about aesthetics. So that means, but also having a positive outlook on, not being like, Ned Flanders, well, how do you neighbor, or something like that, but just having a positive view of life, in my life, and dressing well and working on trying to create good art. That's the best way to fight these people, because they want us depressed, miserable, frumpy, and without hope. And I kind of think about it where I imagine there's one short story I want to write where there's this guy who's, locked up in some sort of like concentration camp, and the guards are miserable, but the guy is he's found some way to just like see it all as a big joke. And so he's driving the guards insane, because they're the ones who have locked him up, but yet he's kind of like ridiculing them from behind the fence and stuff like that. So I always thought like how that's kind of the way to fight these people, is just remind them that they are miserable and they're losers and we're better than them.
Prepared statement. Let's see. Violence is abhorrent. Black Lives Matter. You should kneel every time you hear the anthem. January 6th was an organized attempt to overthrow the government by Donald Trump, Steve Bannon, and Alex Jones. Prepared statement over. And that's my statement.
Well, I'm obvious. I really am like very much against violence. Like I am. I think more so than most people. I'm against like anybody doing anything besides sitting on a chair and smoking cigarettes and fucking dying. But like why would you do anything else? I don't think positivity is like necessarily this great fucking thing. I think, for other philosophical reasons and what fucking have you. But, like, oh, I'm really positive. It's like, all right, well, let's see what happens when you just drive into the Taco Bell and then you get T-boned or something. Look at how positive you be without legs, motherfucker. Like, come on.
I'll be positive when I confront him and I'm like, hey, you hit my car. I'm taking it out on you now.
But no, I'm not into that positivity bullshit. I'm realistic about life and how horrible that it is. But they invent reasons for life to be horrible. They just invent these reasons. Because like before, all of like this Dave Chappelle stuff really happened or whatever, how often are you really hearing about they're like, oh yeah, and then this trans person heard a joke and they died? Like it's not been they're inventing stuff. So I don't know. I just think they're an apocalyptic cult.
Well, I mean, they like to do. Well, there are people who have heard jokes and died. There was the famous case in ancient Greece of a guy who gave wine to his donkey and then died from laughter.
That rules.
I forget his name.
Yeah. I'm thinking that's the other problem with. I'm moving more after spending a lot of time working an online job, and I'm transitioning out of that to something else. I'm becoming more of a reactionary against the internet, because it's so much of it is not real, and the interactions that people have are not ones that you would ever have in real life. And that's where me and my buddy Vince, Rob, and other guys, we're very big about, you meet people online, but you take it offline to build an actual meaningful relationship that's based, or friendships that are based in the real world. Whereas a lot of these younger kids, are they ever going to actually hang out with the people that they play video games with? Because back when we were growing up, we were playing video games as a social interaction. You were playing next to somebody else and then yelling at him for screen peeking while you're playing GoldenEye 64. And then somebody's, you have to go replace the batteries for the rumble packs while somebody answers the door to get the pizza. Like there's a continuous social interaction going on, whereas these kids can just sit there for hours by themselves and interact through a screen. We didn't interact with each other through a screen, and then you had LAN parties and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just wondering if what that's going to look like. What are people actually going to have?
No, but see, that's kind of like a boomer thing to complain about, because one, I think you can have like meaningful relationships with friends on the internet. Matt and I have never met in person, known him for years, great guy, talk to him every day. But like increasingly in like work situations, even in offices and stuff, it's always like, well, we got to talk to the office in Toledo. It's been that way for years. So I don't know. I mean, I think for very, very little kids, they shouldn't be going to school online or anything like that. But, if somebody's 20 something or whatever, it's not that much different, because they're going to be nerds in person. or they're just going to be nerds on the internet and they'll still get the same damn thing really done, except the whole place maybe doesn't smell as fucking bad.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily lamenting some of the things that have changed, and it's not my monkey, not my circus when it comes to the younger crowd. I look at it from, as a writer, I'm becoming, one of the things I had a difficulty with is when I first started working on books is I was writing books that I wanted to read, but maybe not necessarily other people wanted to read. And so this is why I'm trying to understand. I realize that they're not the only readership out there, but what are, just being cognizant of what the demand is as far as literature and what kind of stories, and the ability to relate to someone is part of it. This is why a lot of these new writers just the woke writers just suck, because they can't empathize with anyone who's not directly like them. They're not able to put themselves in anyone else's shoes. They can't create characters that are believable. And even if you don't like them, you at least understand why they are what they are. But to them, everything's just one-dimensional.
Well, it's because everything is a political message. Every single thing that they're doing is a political message. And because of the ideology / religion, cult, whatever you want to fucking call it, that they subscribe to, it's a violation of that if they were to write something outside of that. Like even writing a villain that's like, says the N-word or something like that. They, of course, can't do that. They've got to find new ways to make that guy look terrible, which are the same stale. They just throw in a Hollywood Nazi or something like that. But, they can't write a particularly bad antagonist. They can't, because if it's a political thing, like they have to live it. They're very devout, or at least, outwardly seems to be.
It's almost like they took, I wrote that essay a couple of years ago for Terror House magazine about why Protestants struggle with literature. And I think it's the exact same issue for them, is everything has to go back to their gospel. That has to explicitly contain their gospel message. It can't just be art for its own sake. It has to promote the religion and the tenets of the faith in a way that there's no mistaking it. And that you see that with a lot of Protestant literature is they aren't able to be very subtle about stuff, or things can't be implicit. It has to be like, I remember one time there was some radio show where this guy was interviewing somebody who worked at Disney and was, they were discussing whether there was religious, undertones in some of the movies. And the guy I think he was being quite literal when he said, well, why didn't this character say the sinner's prayer? And he's like, because they're in a country where that wasn't around at the time. Like, what? Like what? I remember I almost stopped my car. I was like, did I just hear what I actually heard? But that's for these people is every interaction, every art, every piece of art, the architecture, everything has to contain the message. And that's what's led to their stagnation. And this is a lesson that they should have been the takeaway is you got to understand how art works, or else you end up writing really bad stuff. But you also have to be able to empathize with people. And I think where a lot of these writers struggled is they just didn't want to try to understand people who don't think like them.
Yeah, I want to highlight a comment here related to this from the chat. From No Sleep Till Breezewood, PA. Libs write Turner Diaries with a rainbow flag.
Oh, that is brilliant. I love that. That is so true.
Yeah. I saw something like that on Twitter recently from Zero HP Lovecraft. He said, The Handmaid's Tale is the Turner Diaries written by a woman. Naturally, she makes it all about her.
No, that's what's funny is also, even this like so-called, extreme right literature, it's all just the same thing. They're they're promoting explicitly their beliefs. And it was frankly the same thing with Ayn Rand. Only her first book was readable. The rest of them I tried reading. I'm like, you can't have a 50-page nonstop speech in a novel. Like, people love Atlas Shrugged. I'm like, no, that is not good literature. You condense that down and you cut that nonsense out. Like it was a very autistic thing to do, to have a 50-page speech. And then she insisted on having in the Fountainhead, she said the entire speech needs to be in the movie. It was like a 5-minute long thing. And her philosophy books are readable because they're explicitly philosophical books. People can love or hate the philosophy, but I thought she articulated what she was trying to say pretty well. But the only book that I could read of hers and enjoy was We the Living. which was about something that she actually knew, which was living in Russia.
I never read that one. I will say you saved yourself at the end by complimenting Rand too. She, she's pretty good. It's kind of a bitch.
I Rand was just horny.
You think?
I remember her work being described ages ago as containing erotic combat bordering on rape, which is pretty accurate. The phrase erotic combat just sticks in my mind.
Erotic combat. Well, doesn't the Fountainhead start out with basically a rape had just occurred?
Well, yeah, not Taggart. I forget the Dominique, whatever her name was. Yeah. She basically tears up her own marble fireplace just to have Howard Rourke come in and rape her. Basically, she creates an excuse for him to come over, and then just sets up a situation where she gets violently raped, and then she marries him at the end of it.
Yeah, so it's a love story.
It's an Ayn Rand love story.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if Matt told you, but I'm not even sure if he knows this, but the official Terror House Radio position is fiercely libertarian, bordering on ANCAP at all times, unless the market goes down and I lose things. In which case, communist.
Disavow. We're about total state control in all things.
That is just not true. I'm gonna fucking control your mother's pussy, dude. Like that's.
Welcome to Terror House Radio, everyone.
Welcome to Terror House Radio, where we aggressively support PepsiCo Frito-Lay bridges in all of our cities. It would be great. Imagine the Taco Bell bridge. They got tons of bridges in Chicago. Imagine them now, Baja Blast themed, with big signs that says "New item." Come and get the Build Your Own Cravings box, $5 through the app only, online exclusive, only at Taco Bell. And every time you drive over it goes, dong, it would rule.
Just take a suspension bridge and put something over it so it looks like a chalupa.
Yes! I'm telling you, this would be so much better than the world that we live in now if everything was just even more. The whole fucking country looked like Times Square. Just M&M stores. It would be great, man. It'd be better than Section 8 housing.
Yeah.
Cabrini Green, brought to you by PepsiCo.
Yes.
Yeah. What's funny is one of the reasons I'm interested in just trying to understand other generations is trying to just understand people in general. And that way I'm able to incorporate that in my writing. For example, I wrote that Terror House Christmas special story last year, knowing that we were going to still have lockdowns this year. It was still going to go on, just because I understood the type of people who were in power. And so which was one of my favorite short stories. But that's where studying things and understanding things allows people to write about things in a way that maintains its relevancy. I mean, how much of the Pilgrim's Digress is becoming more and more like the whole concept of a turbulent era and all that stuff? It seems like things are moving much towards the type of things that are being described as in that book has happened, but now they're happening.
Yeah, pretty much. By the way, everyone should go buy that book. The link is in the description. But yeah, we're starting to see the emergence of a world that's not exactly great. We're starting to see the mentality of the characters in the Pilgrim's Digress just kind of emerge in real life.
Yeah, what's also been fascinating I have a short story that's a prequel to the Pilgrim's Digress coming out where in a couple days that looks at our current situation, and I just started taking out words and inserting other words, and it still made sense. And I'm not going to spoil it because people need to read the short story when it comes out. But one of the things that I did in Pilgrim's Digress was take things that are already going on now, and it's just you remove a word and you put another word in, and it actually makes more sense than it did before, because that's the corruption of our language that's going on. Is they say a word, but what they're actually talking about is something else. But that's how they engage in deception and deceit, is because when someone says we're protecting our democracy, what they really mean is something else. They don't really mean a democracy. Or when someone says we're inclusive, that doesn't mean we include everyone, because if you don't think exactly like them, you're excluded. They're referring to something else, or they say, we need to end white supremacy. That word, that concept, that term has a specific definition that also changes continuously to fit with whoever they don't like. But people get hung up on the actual traditional definition of these things, as opposed to looking at how these words are being used as weapons to control people.
Well, it's worse than just that, man. Even on like just the day-to-day level, your average fucking idiot Gen Z dork zagat motherfucker is saying shit like, "Oh shit, honey, that's bussin'," and like,
I'm glad you brought that up. I still don't understand what bus. I don't understand what that means.
What does it mean?
I don't know.
Apparently it just means good, but I'm pretty sure that it's bussin, bussin'. I believe that it came from busting, as in coming, is the only thing I can think of. But apparently it just means good. Like, oh, I'm bussin'.
So it's from the same school of vocabulary as dick appointment.
I don't know what that is, but sure, yeah.
It's a booty call, basically.
It's,
I didn't know.
Okay.
Do Zoomers? I didn't realize that the Zoomers actually have any interaction with the opposite sex without a smartphone. So how does a booty call work?
Well, I mean, listen, like, it's not everywhere that's like that, or everyone that's like that. There's just a huge online culture of these people are awful. But they're like talking about lockdowns and stuff. I'm in Florida. That's not the fucking case here. We don't do that shit. And
I'm in Mexico.
God willing, we won't again. Yeah.
I'm in Mexico. Same here.
Yeah, so it's not universal. I mean, and like this, I still see kids running around together, riding bicycles and doing all that annoying shit in the middle of the fucking road. I wish they would just go lock down, do that goddamn school on the internet. I don't give a shit about their future. But they're riding bikes in the road or running around being teenagers and stuff, which is awful. Have you ever encountered a gang of like 6 teenagers? You're like, oh God, I hope I don't do anything stupid. They're all going to point and laugh at me. And, it's the worst fucking thing. Like, I don't know why, but
I have a visual now of you just a bunch of 16-year-old girls just pointing at Bryden and laughing.
Oh, I was thinking like 16-year-old boys. They're the worst offenders. Like you trip going up the stairs. It's like, hey, oh, he tripping. Walk much idiot. Oh, you're like, oh, damn it.
Well, that's your imitation was exactly the kind of live stream guys that I see them watching, like where everything is over the top, very melodramatic, very offensive. They talk like hysterical high school girls I grew up with. Yeah. Yes.
These kids are awful. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that my live streams are like a stroke of fucking genius or anything that I do is great. It's comedy stuff. I mainly just get on to, you got to take my Trovo out of the description, by the way. They banned me. I'm not allowed back there. They never told me why. I don't know why I'm banned. I didn't follow anybody. I never did anything. Never got a warning. They just got rid of me. So I'm back on the D Live. But
it's because your audience overlapped with people who were banned, like everyone.
Beardson. Yeah, everybody. But like, yeah, I got screwed over there, so I'm not over there anymore. But like, all I do is I go. I'll be streaming later today, I think. But I'll just go to YouTube and I'll watch stuff, and then I'll play fart noises, and I'll go, oh, what a fucking fat dumb idiot this person is, and then just make jokes and get drunk. So I don't think that I'm too terribly, better than the average thing. But there's a little morning zoo aspect to it all. But I don't know. I don't understand what these children are saying. I know that they think that they're very funny, but they're not. And to a degree, I have to excuse it because, like, especially if somebody's like 16 or something, they're out there dressed ridiculous or something. It's like, okay, they're 16. That's what's trendy with the kids. Hopefully they grow up and they don't, dress like a bunch of dilly fucking holes anymore. But what are you gonna do? I hate them. I can't stand them.
I knew it. I hate them.
I just fucking hate them. You know, they're just teenagers are the most annoying little shits, and people 21, 22 are the most annoying little shits in the whole world.
Bryden is basically now just a manifestation of that bit from The Simpsons with Grandpa Simpson about how everything new is scary and it'll happen to you.
No way, man. I'm going to be funny forever. 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 Forever.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'll have to do some short stories or maybe write a book at some point about that generation, because I think there's some room for dark humor like that. You know, that's going to have to be like a journal style short story about some guy who's trying to go 40 days without complimenting some e-thought online.
Well, you know, one of the worst things that's happened in recent years was that drunk Gen Z cunt who was in the car with her sister. She flips the fucking car while she's live streaming on her phone, and then is like starts filming her sister's fucking dead body and shit.
Oh,
what?
Yeah, you didn't hear about this? This was a few years ago. She went to prison, obviously. But yeah, like some of those kids are really fucked up. But the thing is, like, I don't think they're all like that. I don't think they're all that sociopathic. I just think in general they're just kind of really stupid kids. So we're gonna have to wait before we get all the doom and gloom about whether or not they're really gonna be competent to, you know, have like construction work or something like that. But there's no way they're all like that, right? I mean, they can't be. There's no way. I don't want to talk to them, but there's no way, right?
Well, I'm hoping in 20 years we won't have a situation where plumbing is falling apart because
I'm hoping in fucking 20 years I'm dead.
I mean, that's where the world of Ready Player One is probably going to be the most likely future for the young people, where they're living in trash heap cities with very little. Like their internet's going to be high speed for some reason, and they're going to be able to do virtual reality levels that we didn't think imaginable. But that's about it. That's their compensation for, you know, not being able. They get their supply or their ration of you know, maggoty meat every month, because meat is a treat, guys. So that's what it's going to be like. They don't get to taste or have a pizza except maybe once a month, but they can stream for hours endlessly on some whatever game they're going to be playing then, or they can just sit there and watch someone else play the video game, because apparently that's the thing now.
Listen,
IRL streaming in habitation block 55.
Besides the maggoty meat, I don't see. Well, I never watched Ready Player One. Apparently, it was just a big advertisement for a bunch of stuff, but it did look cool. I'm never gonna fucking watch it, but I don't see what would be the big deal if they do manage to actually give these people a fucking life by hooking them up to the damn Matrix. Well, you know, fine. How's it any different? I mean, like that whole thing, like, oh, but they'll never touch grass or whatever. It's like, yeah, but what's so fucking great about grass? Like, as long as they're happy, I mean, who gives a shit, dude? Like, that's why, like Brave New World, when they gave them all the soma and shit, I'm like, well, they're fucking happy. Besides that uptight dickhead Bernard Marx, besides him, those people were fucking happy. So what's the big deal? The thing is, the government doesn't do that for anybody. They just go, we're all going to need to make some sacrifices. Not us, but you will. And you're not going to be able to drive your car, and you're not going to this and that and the other. They're not offering them the infinite drugs and the, you know, that was a big 90s talking point. Like, all these kids are drugged up. It's like, not on the fun shit. Give them Xanax. Give everybody fucking Xanax. I wouldn't be.
Xanax is not fun.
Xanax is a load of fun? What are you talking about?
No, it's not. It makes you sleepy.
Dude, then you took too much. You take it does make you pretty sleepy. You take enough to be like, I'm good. And you can't drink on it because you will black out. But Xanax rules.
No. The fun drug is something like crystal meth.
No, dude. You get delirious and weird and then sick. It's not good. Like, you just awake for too long.
That's awesome.
Nah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Nah, I don't want to be awake. Right now, for instance, I'd rather not be awake. But can't sleep. I already slept. Your body only lets you sleep so much. You know.
Oppression. That's the new oppression, right?
I got it. I got to highlight another comment from the chat from No Sleep Till Breeze with PA. Demand a better dystopia. State mandated heroin.
Yes.
Well, I mean, they're forcing everybody in my state to take, they're trying to get everyone to take the jab, and now they have safe heroin injection sites. Just self-identify as a homeless person. You'll get all the free heroin that you want.
Wait, they don't seriously give you free heroin. You have to bring your heroin there, right?
Oh, that's that's the next step, man. That's the next step. That heroin may be bad. We're going to give you clean heroin.
That sounds great. I'm just saying, if we're going to have a government, can it do something good? The only thing I've asked, where's my fucking phone? The only thing I've asked, besides lie to me better, because the government doesn't do that. The media doesn't do that. I've wanted them to lie to me better. Don't give me these half-bit lies. Give me actual believable lies. They never do. But also, the big thing, all the Biden administration has to do for me to go, you know what? This despite everything, this is a success. Stop the goddamn spam calls, the 8 a day that every person gets. That should be a bipartisan thing. They should be able to get done somehow. Don't know how to do it. Stop that.
Is that really a big issue now?
Yeah, it's huge. I'm constantly getting spam calls.
It's like all the time, every day, all the time, several a day. Every person's dealing with this shit. Sorry, TJ, I complained about this before. TJ, you tell him. Because he doesn't believe me.
No, I got a call at 6:40 this morning from a likely spammer. So it's a lot of spam calls, and I don't even bother blocking the numbers anymore because they keep using it from. I don't know how they do it, but they just keep coming up with new numbers.
They're spoofed numbers.
Someone who's
if you call them back, that's somebody else's number. So never pick these up, because if you pick them up and nobody is on the other line, they know that's an active line. So they'll use that to sell to some other place that wants to spam you, or they know they can spoof that number. I don't know how it works exactly. But yeah, if you call them back, a lot of the time, that's an actual person's number. Like they're using people have called using your phone number.
Right. That's what's crazy. Because I've looked up, like, who is this person? And then I realize it's some ordinary somebody in the same zip code or cell phone service area, but I'm pretty sure they weren't calling me to talk to me about my non-existent student loans.
Yeah, or your Medicare back braces, or that. The extending your car warranty. Yeah.
I mean, the joke going right now is that the Biden is just speed running the Bush administration. I guess it's appropriate that we also have spam calls again.
Yeah, I feel like we've gone back to where my gut tells me that there was a trajectory that this country was going to go on, and Trump made a small turn off the highway onto a side road for a little bit. It's still moving in the same direction as that road, but we took a small side. We took a little bit of drive in the countryside, and that was enough to freak them all out. So now we're back on the highway, but this is where it was always supposed to go. And this is why you see guys like W, who back when we were growing up, he was the most hated. He was a fascist, he was a Nazi, and now he's a total shrill for the globalists. And he's, dumping all these people under the bus on 9/11, saying, "Oh, well, the terrorists are the same as those people on January 6th," and all that kind of stuff. Like they were all. It was all a game as to who was going to be driving the car in terms of running the country, but it was going to be going down the same road at the same speed to the same destination, which is where we are today.
Yeah, we're in. I don't want to say hell world because that's an annoying overused chapo meme, but it's basically that. We've recircled back to the early odds, except things are just shittier and lamer. Everything's dumb. Everyone's poor. The world sucks. Everyone's hypersensitive. The airport mentality, TSA mentality, has been brought to every stage of public life.
Yes. Well, what's funny? I was getting on a plane. I just flew back from California, and when I was going through the TSA at the Sacramento airport, they just started waving people through. They look at your driver's license. They didn't even bother looking at my boarding pass. And then when we were going through security, they're like, "Leave your shoes on." I think that now TSA has been around for a lot longer, but I just wonder if at some point people are going to get exhausted doing this everywhere. I mean, in King County, which is the county that Seattle Metro's in, They now have vaccine passports. If you want to go to a Starbucks, you have to show your papers. And how frustrated are all these people? And people, you know, some retard on Twitter was like, oh, well, you know, 84% of them are vaccinated, so it's not a problem. It's a problem when you forget your papers and then you can't go get coffee. That's like having to have your driver's license to do anything, or an ID to do anything. It means that you are profoundly inconvenienced if you lose it.
In their defense, just because I am a voter ID guy, you do need your license to do a lot of stuff. And, you know, I'm a pretty big advocate of got your keys, cell phone, and wallet. But none of that shit is medical. And it's my concern, okay, if you have to have this specific medical thing, well, how do you know I don't have fucking leprosy? Huh? Like, we got to make sure I don't have fucking, you know, that, or like AIDS or a cold for that matter. Nobody likes.
Speaking of AIDS, isn't it ironic that, you know, during the AIDS epidemic, you know, people who were dying of a completely avoidable disease were being celebrated as these martyrs, and we need to spend millions of dollars to figure out how to cure something that people can avoid just by not screwing each other in deviant ways. And then that's all good and beautiful, but I mean, if somebody pays someone else to go cough in their face, you know, 1,000 men to cough in their face and they die from COVID, are we going to throw them a parade? Are we going to have a COVID awareness concert where some guy who intentionally got COVID is going to be seen as some sort of hero?
If that was happening, that would be awesome.
Oh, you know what? That is another short story.
Dennis Prager said he intentionally caught COVID.
That's what I so infuriating, because back when I was in high school, I was having a debate with another journalism, high school newspaper student.
Boo! That's two things: high schooler and journalist. We got to end all high school newspapers in this country. There's nothing good going on there. I guarantee it.
Yeah. Because there was this issue I was learning about CPR, and one of the things that they were doing at that point, saying you need to be conscientious about, if you don't know who the person is and you don't know their medical condition, they could have a disease that's transferable through blood contact. So you had to be very careful about all that kind of stuff. And I said, well, if you're working with someone and they have HIV or AIDS, shouldn't you be notified in case they have some sort of medical thing where you got to do CPR? And that's something good to know because you come in contact with it. And she was like, well, no, that'll lead to discrimination. It's nobody's business. Their medical history is no one's business. And here we are now. And I'm willing to I would bet my life savings that girl is a totally full-blown Branch Covidian.
Well, let's see. Yeah, I don't know. There's no consistency to it because, again, like how they're run by fear is there doesn't need to be any consistency to like what they're saying. It's all fear based, and that's why when it comes to the thing that stuck with me here that bothers me, that hopefully you'll change your damn mind on, is that they are demoralizing their side. I don't think that they are. I can't imagine these people. One, they're fucking stupid and inconsistent. I don't think that they're going to look at it that way, because they're going to look at it like this is what's on the news and this is what they say to do. And then this is what Rachel Maddow says is good. This is what Chapo Trap House says is good, or something like that. They're not critical thinking people. Not that I'm a genius. I'm a fucking alcoholic who just calls shit gay on the internet all the time. Okay. So I'm not genius, but I know that probably let's not open these doors to, oh, we should need to know your medical history. Oh, I mean, if you have hepatitis, you're going to be hard pressed to find or HIV, you're going to be hard pressed to find a job in like the service industry where you're dealing with food. How transmittable, getting HIV blood on your salad is, I don't really know. It doesn't seem like it's that, but nobody wants blood on their salad. But that was a thing I remember when I worked in restaurants. Well, upon getting my food handler's permit in Washington State, one of the things was, it was like, if you got hepatitis, you're screwed. They didn't say anything about HIV, but they said like, no, if you got hepatitis C, you're not going to work here.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but they don't have to be consistent, man.
Well, what'll also be interesting is if with this whole vaccine thing, I mean, my state is, it is genuinely a dystopian government. It is a full-on theocracy in terms of how they're implementing this stuff, and also a lot of people are just completely bought into the greatest of the bootlickers are here. These are people. I was reading, one business owner was commenting on some forum I was on. He said, "I'm constantly having people snitch on me. Like people will spend their days going to businesses just to see if any of them are violating any of the rules, and they're reporting them to the Department of Health."
Why would that be surprising, given that, like, how many, the bake the cake case, how many different places did they go? It was like 9 until they finally found someone who was like, nah.
Well, what was funny about that story, I don't know if I fully remember it accurately, but according to what I understand, the guy who actually was turned down was okay with it because it was a friend of his. That's why he went to her. His gay partner is the one who, had a tissy fit, posted something on Facebook, and our state attorney general saw it, the post, and then sued the old lady. Yeah, that's pretty much how it happened. Like the guy's like, "Oh, I understand why you don't want to do this," and then his insignificant other.
I just think it's hilarious that like gay dudes have nagging wives too.
That's great. No, yeah. It just amazes me that people are. I don't want to say amazes me. I've lived here my whole life, but what's funny is the lack of self-awareness. These are the same people who were talking about how Trump was going to lock up gay people in concentration camps and be an authoritarian dictator, and then they turn around and are doing all that stuff, and then they just come up with excuses for why they're doing it. Oh, we're doing this because we care. We're all in this together. We're trying to help. We're trying to stop. It's just like
the only thing comparable to that you really see on the other side of things, which is like the Republican side, which they can bring up. They'd be like, "Oh, so Republicans don't care about the deficit anymore?" I'm like, not any of the Trump ones, not any of the Trump people. Like those were
deficit isn't real.
Well, it fucking is, and we've been over this, Matt. I'm not fucking having a conversation with you again right now about how money's fucking real. So it's too close to the end here for me to teach you about fucking economics again. And fucking dick shit, that still pisses me off. Fucking moron. Like, I just, good grief. But no, I mean, you're a fucking dickhead. But that's any of the people that came in, to the what I think is the rational side are typically not your normal Republicans, because I don't really consider those people Republican. I'm registered Republican, but I wouldn't call myself a Republican unless it's just a simple thing. That's really the only oh, you're not living up to your own rules type of thing that I think could be kind of comparable. But there's a perfectly valid excuse for that, which is these aren't Republicans. These are Trump people. People don't describe themselves as a Republican anymore. They go, "I'm a Trump person." What are you still? Would you find a fucking M&M on your desk, Matt? What are you giggling for? God. Matt, look. Skittles. Ooh, giggle, giggle. Oh, giggle, giggle, Matt. Oh, giggle, giggle, Matt. Here comes the airplane. You're the towers. Ooh.
Skittles, man.
You're just making it worse.
My camera's all fucked up. It's got to focus. It's not doing it. God damn it.
It's like a zoomer, right? Can't focus.
Damn kids. No, I don't care. The more wrinkles that these are not age wrinkles. These are not crow's feet. These are not laugh lines. These are every time I meet a Gen Z person, I get another wrinkle in my skin. These are just lines of determined hatred for all of fucking any 20-year-old on the planet. Dumb little piece of shit. I swear to God. Matt, too. Matt's a spiritual fucking Gen Z piece of shit.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He's like, money's not real. And never told a joke in his life. It's fucking horrible.
Money's a social construct.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
I didn't say that, Bryden.
I can look into your dumb fucking eyes. Like your eyes are like a snow globe of just like that says equality in them, and like just some type of fucking Fauci-eyed idiot. Fucking Janet Yellen idiot, fucking Jerome Powell motherfucker over there. You just making shit up in your stupid head. You don't know anything about anything. You just stick to history and writing books, so you don't ever talk about money again.
Speaking of money, probably should wind down the show because A, it's been a couple of hours, and B, I actually have to go to work. So, TJ, anything else you'd like to add?
I think we pretty much covered the bases as far as hating on Zoomers. But people obviously pick up The Legend of Forenia. If you haven't read in my other books, there's Pilgrim's Digress that you can get at terrorhousepress.com. And then my other books will be available on my website that links to it, tjmartinell.com.
Yep, you can go check that out. Legend of Forenia is coming this Friday. We'll have pre-orders available very, very soon. And you can also pick up the Pilgrim's Digress from us, like TJ said, and check out all his other books as well. They're fantastic. Bryden, anything else you want to add / plug or anything?
No. I mean, I'll be streaming and probably like at 5 p.m. today. So if you're listening to this now, or if you're in your car listening to it, and it's already happened, well, then you missed it. But stlive.tv/Bryden. World's only comic on Twitter, and
the straight facts. Straight facts.
All of that.
And it's the only thing about Bryden that's straight.
Oh, that's great. That's pretty cool.
Okay, yeah,
You actually have legs, or have they just like folded up into you under you penguin-bodied fucking bald piece of fucking shit? You know, your goatee's growing in more menacingly. So
there you go.
What is that? What is it? What was that? What you do to dudes' balls? What is that?
That's me pulling your strings.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll bet.
Call back to the last show if you didn't watch it with Paul Town and Birdie.
I'll bet you'd like to fucking pull on me, you fucking faggot.
Okay, yeah, but that pretty. I guess that's pretty much it. Yeah.
And now Matt, after insulting people, is gonna do his cool guy spiel. Everybody, his cool guy spiel, and it ends with Latin. That way, you know he's fucking smart because it ends with "Illegitimate I'm Camerundum. Don't let the bastard drag you down. I'm Matt Forney with Bryden Proctor, and we are out like Seacrest." Fucking loser. God, I'm so glad you're in Mexico. That way I can't just fucking drive over there and just kill you. You're not worth the gas money. TJ, you're all right.
Thanks, Brian. That means a lot.
Yeah, check out my website at mattforney.com. That'll do it for this. That'll do it for this episode of the show. Check out Terror House Magazine at Terror House Press every day. TerrorHouseMag.com, TerrorHousePress.com. Social media links in the description. Every episode of the show can be found at TerrorHouseRadio.com. Terror House Radio is produced by Bryden Proctor and presented by Katya Dag.
Just still hasn't even fucking updated it.
Intro music by Zero Pulse. Illegitimate hardcore random. Don't the bastards grind you down. I'm Matt Forney with Bryden Proctor.
I'm Ryan Seacrest, and we are out.
Money isn't real.
You're an